Well, hello everyone. My name is Nish, and I want to welcome you back to my series of Good Grief. Today, the topic is Good Grief in Sharing. And what we're doing today is continuing our conversation about grief. And the topic today is sharing. Now, how I arrived at uh, thinking that I wanted to talk about this in particular is that as many people do, uh, I go on to various forms of social media, and I go ahead and uh, follow a lot of content providers that offer a lot of good, positive, and um, caring messages of hope, messages of, you know, well being. And lot of them, at least most of them, are very humorous because I prefer to have humor in my life. If we can't smile and laugh and be happy, then why are we here, right? But anyway, but in terms of grief, we can't always be smiling and laughing, though that is part of grieving, because when you're thinking back at good memories that you've had with the people you've lost in your life, you often think about the times that they made you very happy. So, and I do believe that's incredibly important when we're grieving about somebody we love, or let's say, um, I watched a TikTok video by one of the content creators that I follow. He goes by the uh, name of Mansions and Mascara, but it's really Christopher Mackin, and he has a clothing and cosmetic line called Shug. Anyway, because he calls you Shug for sugar. Anyway, and he's a Southern gentleman. So anyway, he was talking about um, he was recently feeling pretty down, and I'm not sure if it was because of grief towards losing a loved one, but in order for him to bring himself out of feeling depressed, he shared with a friend that he was speaking with a story about his grandfather. And it was a very funny story how his grandmother ran a beauty shop in the back of their house. And he that's where he learned a lot about hairdressing and all. And his grandfather would sometimes come home in the afternoon or whatever. They were already elderly and retired, but his granddaddy loved to sit on his lazy boy recliner, and sometimes he'd recline in that and he'd fall asleep. Well, several times, and Christopher was a boy then, and he loved his grandfather, and his grandfather loved him, but he said his grandfather would sleep pretty soundly. So he'd grab a bunch of the curlers that his grandmother used to uh, do perms on ladies, and he would put these curlers in his grandfather's hair while he was asleep. And then when he woke up, his granddad would say, "What is this?" you gave me a perm, and it was just a funny story that he shared with a friend. And by sharing that story about his grandfather, whom he loved very much, turned his feelings around, turned his day around. Instead of feeling depressed, he was he felt like his heart was full of love, and he was laughing at the memory and how his grandfather would wake up surprised, like, what's all of this? And so I want to encourage you to share your memories. Sometimes um, you feel like, well, I don't want to burden my friends or family members, and talk about my my memories about somebody I really love that has passed. There is no harm. In fact, you're honoring the memories that you've had, the times that you've lived with that beautiful person that was part of your life, and you miss them very much. And maybe you're feeling down, but I encourage you to share those memories, share the stories you have of things that you've done together, and how that person made you feel, how that person made you laugh, especially the funny things that you did together or that they did that just made you smile and laugh. And, it just brings out a very wonderful energy in you. And you're allowing your loved one to bring you that wonderful energy. You know, Sometimes simply sharing how much you miss them, and that you miss them because they used to make you laugh when they did this, and just uh, share that with someone, and encourage your friends or family to share with you a memory about that person or another person that has left their lives, that um, makes them feel good, makes them laugh, a funny story, or just a heartwarming story about them. Let it be a mutual sharing. It's a wonderful thing because you're exchanging love with one another and allowing the person that you miss so much to bring that light into your life. I mean, it doesn't have to be a long story. You could simply share the way they answered the telephone, like, hello, like they made a silly expression answering the phone, or um, share some music that they love that you also listen to as well. Maybe the person you're talking to had not heard of that song before. Now you're sharing a song that you like, that your loved one liked, and now another person is enjoying that music too. You see what happens when you share the wonderful things that those people that were part of your life for even a short time, but you remember how it affected you and affected you with love. When you share that love, you are continuing that love. Grieving doesn't mean that you should just lock yourself away and feel depressed and feel bad that all you do is think about them and miss them. Yes, you miss them. But some of the things that you experience together make for good, meaningful, and healing conversations with a trusted friend with another family member where maybe you both can reminisce about that person and make each other feel good about it. You know, and sometimes the memories that you have might, well, quite quite often for some people, the memories that you have that you feel regretful about, like the mistakes you've made, and you regret doing them because they were against the loved one that has passed, or the mistakes, maybe you had arguments about things. And sometimes just sharing that is um, is healing for you. But a lot of times, like when I recall some arguments that I've had with my own father, um, now when I think back, I think that is just hilarious. Like, when I didn't eat all the food on my plate at dinner, my dad would say, and here, we're Japanese Americans, but he would say, there are people in China that don't get to eat this much food. You should finish your food, right? Like something like that. And I would say, well, just send this to them. It was like, but I was a kid, or if I complained about walking like 2 blocks to school every day and back, because we really lived very close to my school. My dad would say, I had to walk 10 miles in the snow to go to school, but I was glad to go to school. And at the time, I didn't realize, or it didn't dawn on me. My dad lived in Beverly Hills. He was part of uh, part of the family. We lived with the Barrymores on the Barrymore estate in Beverly Hills, and my grandfather would, but because the house was on the top of the hill, or the estate, because there was several dwellings within that estate for for John Barrymore. Uh, my dad and his siblings couldn't very easily walk down that whole hill to go to school and then come home, walk back up. He would get everybody in his pickup truck and take them to school. So my dad did not have, and lived in Beverly Hills. Like, snow? There was no snow. So, but when you're like 7 years old, you listen to this, and you in your mind, or my mind, I was thinking like, wow, my dad had to walk through snow drifts. All right, well, when you share a story like that, you know it becomes a funny story. So anything that you say, um talk about with your friends about the person that you're grieving, can have a very uplifting effect for you. You could even talk about, like, let's say you're at a restaurant and you're having a conversation with your friends, or people you're dining with, and sometimes something might remind you of um, your aunt who passed away, or your grandmother, your mother, your father, a sibling, brother or sister, and just whatever the topic is that's being talked about, it reminds you of a particular thing that that person would always say that made you chuckle, and just share it. Just share it. And you'll feel a lightness in your heart. So I am encouraging you to please don't hold back when you're thinking about someone you've lost and love very much and miss very much. But when you have a chance to share how you felt about them, about their lives, and what you loved about them with someone. When you have a chance, do it. Take that chance and notice how you feel that love. It's like they're there with you again. All right. You're Some people will think, well, I'm either grieving or I'm living, right? Like we're living our lives, we're going along, and all of a sudden we think about something that makes us miss. Like miss my dad every day, but um, my grief is something that I can live with because my dad isn't here in the physical, but because I think of him every day, he is still with me. So please, we can be grieving and living. All right. Please remember that. All right. So tell all the stories you can while you can about the people you love so much. And, you know, sharing really is your gift to the world. And by you having these memories, that was or those are the gifts that you get from your loved one. So knowing that their lives mattered so much to you, that you have beautiful memories, funny memories, sometimes some difficult memories, but maybe sharing them, you heal. And before you know it, your heart will open up and feel the love. All right? All right. Well, this has been another episode of Good Grief. I'm Nish. And until the next time we see each other, be gentle with yourself and be willing to share your memories and remember. All right. Take care and know that I love you. All right. Bye for now.